Politics. And thanks for tuning in to tonight's edition. Rancho Port Murray, I reporting from City Too Tough to Die, New London. Mike Passero is with us tonight, and thank you, Mike, for coming on because it was short notice, and I appreciate you coming on.
No problem, Murray. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Before we get going, just a couple of announcements. Italian Dramatic Club has a new cook, Tom Chevalier, and the sauce the other night was second to none. Tom, I don't know what you did. The chicken was outstanding. Sam Torello, John Madden, the whole crew down there. How am I going to lose any weight in this city too tough to die for? It's impossible. Now, to top that off, tonight, Dave McGovero brings me down. Well, his beautiful wife brought it down. Diane, was a beautiful woman in London. Wonderful bowl of beef stew. And I was just explaining to Mike and his wife that I'm on the, what diet that I'm on? Nutrisystem diet. And I'm doing good with the exception of when I'm treated to these unbelievable meals. Dave McGovern, thank you very much. Forget the cost, Dave. Open a restaurant. Don't forget Cassius Chaney, representing New London, the next heavyweight champion of the world, by the way. He's fighting at the casino next Thursday night. He's got a big match. And then he's going to Madison Square Garden. And Sue Devlin down in Muddy Waters has tickets if you're interested. It's going to be a big night. Now, without further ado, let's get to the situation at its hand. Mike, today's announcement by the governor that he vetoed the budget, which was predictable. What effect do you see that happening in the city of New London? And do you buy into these scare tactics that he's spreading around? It's fake news.
I'm not sure of fake news you're referring to, Murray.
Well, I'll tell you one piece of it. When he threatens to close Avery Point down, things like that, that's right out of the political playbook, because you hurt the people that needs it the most, and it's just a threat, I believe, an idle threat. But please weigh in on how you feel about it.
Well, you know, I to be honest with you, I'm not that invested in those elements of the budget. I mean, certainly I think support for higher education, and my daughter's a graduate at Avery Point. I think that's an important institution. In fact, the whole university system, public university system in Connecticut is important. But to be honest with you, I'm not that knowledgeable about those parts of the budget. Since the budget was passed by the General Assembly, we've just been spending time crunching numbers, trying to understand the effect on New London and on the school system. And based on my knowledge of that, I think the school system, from what I can tell, was comfortable with the budget. Our education funding was protected and probably improved a little from some of the earlier estimates based on previous budget proposals. But certainly the situation on the city side for the general government was not good. So I'm not that displeased to see it vetoed and hope for something better in the next budget.
So there's some confusion as to the effect of the budget being vetoed, being that some people say New London was going to make out better with the if the Republican budget were adopted, and some people, including you, stated that it's going to be a bigger problem than we know. And where do you come down with those figures and statistics as we speak?
Well, I think, you know, the stuff that I've seen in social media about the budget leaving New London in a better position, that's not correct based on the numbers. So all I'm going, and you have to separate the school funding from the general government side funding. But on the general government side, we're not in very good shape. We would have to cut an additional $1.6 million just to get back to the 9.3% tax increase. And that's quite frankly what we've been busy trying to do. Because if that's the position that the governor's going to be negotiating from, then I don't think we could be as optimistic to think that we're not going to have to cut considerable more from the previous budget that passed in order to get down below 9%. I think council's stated goal, they'd like to get to 7%. It's going to be very ambitious, and it's going to be a debate as to how much we want to sacrifice, how much services we want to sacrifice, how many more employees we want to sacrifice.
So I think that.
But just to say where the truth lies, I obtained what's called the municipal runs for New London. So it has each revenue category and how much is funded in that category in the budget. So the finance department simply took those numbers, plugged them into our budget, and if they were zeroed out revenue, then we zeroed out whatever revenue we estimated was going to be budgeted in that. And some revenues were zeroed out, like the Mercer payments, to make up for the cap on the automobile tax. And I mean, it is what it is. The numbers are what they are. There's no debate at all. And when questions were raised as to whether our numbers were correct, we went back and redid them, and the numbers are the numbers.
You mentioned
And it depends, by the way, it depends where you're measuring the difference from too. When I say we need to cut another 1.6 million, we're measuring from the numbers we estimated when we passed the last budget in the city to the revenues that are actually included in the budget that passed the General Assembly. And that's really all that matters, because that's what we're dealing with. We're trying to balance the budget in New London.
So all that matters to the taxpayers is that a 10% tax increase is not that popular. And
Well,
I haven't spoken with many people that endorse that or look forward to paying that.
It's not, I mean, of course it's not popular. And it's not popular when we go to the gas pumps and we find out the price of gas has gone up and spiked, or any type of increase like that. This tax increase is driven solely by what's going on up in Hartford and the financial situation of the state. They have, over a $5 billion deficit they're dealing with over the next 2 years. And that disease is contagious, and it's affecting the municipalities. And when you deal with when you're having the effect on a municipality like New London that has, always scraped to get by, there's not much left at this point. And, I've spent the years that I was on council, as you know, trimming proposed budgets and cutting, everything we could. And after doing that for years and being the situation today, it really is getting hard to find more cuts to be made without really sacrificing the services we've been accustomed to here in the city.
Now, you're a smart guy, Mike. You graduated from Connecticut College. And right in that chair on our show one time, you said that you gave up the best job in the world, become mayor of the city of New London. Is it a more difficult job than you anticipated?
No. And it's probably not the most difficult job I've had. It could potentially become the most fulfilling. I've spent my life working out problems, difficult problems, and problems that, weren't necessarily going to be, that there really was even a solution for.
Are you a workaholic?
No. No, my mother told me early in life, probably the first time I got in trouble, that I'm better off if I stay busy.
Last week you were quoted in the Day as proposing a possible supplementary vehicle tax.
No, I did not propose that.
Oh.
As a matter of fact, I can't remember what exactly I warned the council that was a problem with the budget that passed the General Assembly. They took away the cap on the motor vehicle tax, which was 37.
They being the state legislature.
State legislature. They took away that cap. Now, whether that means we go back to the old system where we have no choice, that means the motor vehicle tax goes up to the mill rate, or whether we could still leave it there, I don't know the answer to that yet. And I think the option of having to send out a supplemental motor vehicle tax bill, we've all paid our motor vehicle tax bill. That's only paid once, unlike the property tax where you do it in 2 installments. So we've paid that. And even at 37 mills, we're not competitive with the cities and towns around us. So I think one of the worst options is to have to go back to the old system of taxing the motor vehicles at the same rate as we tax real estate. I think that's a bad option. I'm not proposing that. So that's, should
What's
be
our mill rate now?
44, well, there is no mill rate. We have no budget.
What was our last mill rate?
The mill rate under the budget that they repealed, the budget we passed on May 30th, was 44.3.
So that's a pretty high number, would you not agree?
In comparison to cities' mill rates, it is not. In comparison to suburbia that we live in southeastern Connecticut, it is. And that's why we're at such a disadvantage.
So,
And the reason for that is we are required to provide all the social services and to house the social services, provide all the services to the region. I mean, people drive into New London for most of their needs still to this day, and a lot of them for their employment, and then drive back out. But it's no different than the situation in Hartford, the situation in Bridgeport, where
But
I was talking to Mayor. Go ahead.
isn't that what we wanted in New London? Isn't that what we designed New London to be?
It depends what you mean by we.
I mean,
our
the ci-
forefathers,
the city government and the leaders of New London
I
in the
think-
past.
I think that, I believe that's, I mean, a region needs its city, its urban center. And historically, New London has been that, really, from the beginning. I mean, New London was the first city that was here, everything else built up around it. And New London remained the urban center for the region. The problem with the system is if we had county governments, this wouldn't be a problem,
But we don't.
but we don't.
Mike, you're the mayor, so when I say you, most of the comments that we hear and read are directed toward you. You are under extreme pressure to make a deal with Connecticut College, Mitchell College, L&M Hospital, and nonprofits to increase or get a better contribution from them for the New London tax. Am I correct?
Yes.
I don't think it's going to be that easy. Where do we stand with, and Connecticut College is the one that's always highlighted, maybe because you went there and people think you have maybe an inside connection there that will make the job easy. Are you negotiating with them, and is it as easy as people think it is?
No, I have absolutely no leverage legally.
No, I'm not
And
saying
Chris
legally.
Soto and myself put legislation forward at the General Assembly to modify the section of the statutes 12-81 that provides for all these exemptions for different categories of entities, non-taxable entities, to take their properties off the tax rolls. And we really didn't even get to the starting line. I'm going to try again in the next session and try to build more support and try to get some reform to the system. That's what's really killing us in New London. But absent having that, any kind of statutory authority to get the nonprofits to help share the costs of the services that the city provides and which they benefit from, have to cobble together the best arguments there are. And that's what I intend to do.
Through
We've
the
gotten to the
state or
point-
through
No,
local negotiations?
Myself going to the different organizations and pleading the case, making sure they understand. First of all, communication is key. For all I know, they don't even really understand the situation. And right now, we've gotten to the point where either they all start to kick in, or they're going to lose the services they've grown to depend on, along with the rest of us, because we can no longer afford to pay for it. So if they want to maintain these services, they're going to have to help the rest of us pay for them. And that's about what it comes down to at this point. Because there really isn't much I can cut. Right now, the finance department, for instance, is down to the director and the deputy director. It's really nobody else I can get rid of. And there's no worker bees. Well, they're worker bees, they're accountants, they're going to have to do it all. And similarly in the other departments. We don't have much left. As you know, the public works situation. We've been scraping by for years. City Hall was full a couple of weeks ago with the citizens demanding more police officers. And I don't have, theoretically, right now, with our state budget, I don't have the cash to cover the police officers we have. So that's the situation. I mean, either all of these property owners that are not paying start to chip in something, or we're all going to lose the services.
So that's not gonna happen overnight, and it probably won't happen in our lifetime.
Actually, it's realistically, because everybody's on a budget cycle too, you know, I'm not that optimistic about it helping out the situation this year. But I'm very determined to make sure that we have an increase in our revenue based on voluntary pilots from the non-tax-paying property owners by the time we're putting a budget together July 1.
And you're gonna achieve that through negotiations with the different entities.
Well, talks with them, yeah. It's not really negotiations since, you know, I'm not in a position to negotiate. But I can go and inform them of the situation, the direness of it, and propose what I believe is a fair share contribution.
So Mike Becerra was on a couple weeks ago, and he had an idea of taxing, like, and specifically, he mentioned Connecticut College, putting $100 a head tax on each student. And that would generate $3 million or something over 3 or 4 years. Is there any merit to a proposal like that, or
It'll come out to that anyway. So, and I don't want to talk specifics about any particular, you know, organization that I haven't been at yet. So I don't want to talk about Conn College, but I do have a meeting scheduled, and I'll be talking to them next week. And if I was, you know, if I was successful and they understood the situation, it would come down to that for them. I mean, that you would take the amount of money that they would agree to pay as a voluntary pilot, and it's not a unique thing, you know, because you know, Yale does it, Brown does it, Mitchell College, in fact, does it, and Mitchell College's payment that we just renegotiated last year turns out, as a percentage of their endowment, to be extremely generous in terms of the percentage. If you measure college or universities, we did a quick little survey and some calculations to the colleges and universities that do contribute to their host city, and you know, we measured it, we calculated it as a percent of their endowment. And so, for instance, Yale's contribution to New Haven, if I'm remembering the numbers right, so don't hold me to this, but it's something like 0.03% of their endowment, which is in the billions of dollars. If you take Mitchell College's contribution as a percentage of their endowment, which is very meager, it's about 0.5%. So that's, and all the rest of them, I think the average percentage of endowment that's contributed by a college that are host city, including Brown and Yale and various other ones that we compared, came out to about 0.4% of the endowment.
You mentioned that manpower in many departments is down. There's a
0.04% of their endowment. I left a zero off.
Who was that now?
0.04% of their
And what college?
endowment.
What college?
No, that's the average
Oh, that's
of the
it.
ones we studied. 0.04.
You mentioned that manpower is down in many of your departments. There's a rumor going around that you have offered, and I say you, being the head guy, people retirement packages with full medical benefits. That seems to have created a little buzz around town. Is there any truth to that?
There's always some truth to the fake news, but that's definitely a fake news story. I really am amazed at some of the stories circulating now. Some of them are actually made out of whole cloth. I don't know whether it's a symptom of the Trump era. You can just say whatever you want and let the truth catch up if it can. But in this case, there's no secret, and there's no secret that one of the things we had to do was sit down, and in this state, under the collective bargaining laws, we have to go to the unions in order to offer early retirements. So staff sat down with 2 of the union presidents, and the only step we've gotten to is sat down with them and said, would you be open to discussions about early retirement if any of your members are interested in retiring? And they said yes. And the first step is to go around and ask if there's any members that are interested in early retirement. We've gotten to that stage, and now we'll sit down with them again, with the unions, and we'll see what kind of incentives it will take, what their employees are looking for. And if the math works out for the taxpayers, then that's something we'll pursue. It's a better alternative than layoffs, because if we lay off the youngest employees, and it's a shame to do that if there are older employees that are just waiting for the opportunities to retire.
Your predecessor, former mayor of the city of New London, did a lot of damage financially to our city, to your city. One being the police department. Actually, he ruined the police department. He fired key people, gave them a huge bonus at the great cost to the taxpayer, which I don't think was ever really defined. What's going on with the selection of the police chief? Isn't it important that we get a chief in place to bring that department back to order?
Well, first of all, I think that the department has come a long way in the last year under the leadership of Peter Reichert. And I believe that the police force has just what they've gone through in the last 5 or 6 years, and I think it even predated my predecessor, some of the turmoil in that department. It just shows the professionalism of the officers that are there. They've just done a remarkable job throughout. But I think morale has really improved since Pete Reichert took over, and I think it's evident all over the city in their relationship with the community and the policing and everything. It's just I couldn't be more pleased. But I think the selection of a police chief is an important process. I've largely stayed out of it because I have complete faith in the professionals I have working for me. I'm not an expert in everything, and I'm certainly not an expert in that. But I do have staff that are, and truly are. So they've put together a very, very good process. And I know people are getting impatient, but I think it's important to have a process when you're selecting a police chief. They are at the stage, well, as you know, the advertisement went out, the applications came in. We got 14, I believe, 14 or 15 applications. The first stage was to compare those applications with the qualifications that were posted, and that eliminated a certain amount. And then a very diverse selection committee was formed to represent all the different communities within our city. And those individuals sat around and reviewed the applications that remained. Their goal was to get down to a manageable number, whether it be 3, 4, 5. And then those candidates will be invited to meet the community, and the community will be invited to meet them. And they'll all have final interviews with me. I'll get involved at the last stage. And based on all the input we get, I'll make a selection. I think it's I can't take credit for designing the process, but it was explained to me, and I said,
So how far away from
we're not that far away.
you know, civilians like me?
Right now, it's just a matter of scheduling the next step, which is scheduling the meeting with the community to meet the finalists. So we'll have a meeting with the community to meet the finalists, and so it's just a scheduling matter, and then the selection.
So civilians like me, who know nothing about selecting a police chief, I think many of us feel that Chief Reichert is the man for the job. He's a gentleman. And his tenure as the acting chief, I mean, he's been the acting chief under very difficult circumstances. Mm-hmm. He's a very nice guy. I want him to get the job. I sense that you support him. At the public hearing, he's going to have huge support from everybody. We gotta make it happen. It seems like it's being drawn out for some reason, but maybe that's just perception.
I think the process is important, but I appreciate your sentiment.
We have a call. You mind if we take it?
No, that's what we're here for, right?
All right. Thanks for calling. You're live with the mayor.
Hi, how are you guys? Thanks for taking my call.
Good
Thanks for
evening.
calling.
No worries. Mr. Mayor, I have a question regarding the situation, the financial situation in the budget. Gail is here operating as Lawrence Memorial and also the Medical Center, and they have a few properties here. Are they tax-free, or do they pay taxes on their property?
They are currently an organization that does not pay taxes. One of the Governor Malloy's proposals in his proposed budget was that the hospitals in the state would begin to pay property taxes. In New London, that would have brought in an additional $5.4 million in revenue. It's important to remember, though, that because under the current system, because we don't have a budget, I don't know what the current system is now, but under the system that existed up till June 30th, the state reimbursed the city in pilot payments, payment in lieu of taxes, for organizations like the hospital. There's a revenue line item in the state budget for college and hospital pilot. So we did not get fully reimbursed for the lost tax revenue for our 2 colleges and the hospital. However, we did get at least partially reimbursed. So
right,
we don't.
but
So
when
we,
you agree, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
no, it's just important to remember that we're not losing all of the revenue because the colleges and the hospital are non-taxable, or haven't up to this point.
New Haven is struggling with their budget as well, and Yale has taken a bunch of property there. Like they continue to build and build and build, but they are a tax-free entity that don't contribute to taxes, no matter the endowment or the reimbursement. Obviously, that even New Haven is being shortchanged on. Do you think that contributes negatively to your city as it is doing in New Haven? Because New Haven's reaping bad benefits from having Yale as a tax-free entity. And if we're going to have that here in New London, that's also going to bring us further down, because that would actually help with the budget if they were actually paying taxes. Because what's happening is the people who live here are splitting the bill. And you're talking about the mill rate going up. It's already substantially high. I thought New Haven's was high, but your New London here is really outrageous. And even to consider a supplemental motor vehicle tax is absurd. I know many people who have moved from New London just because it's costly to live here and there's no benefit, and the city's not getting better. There's a homelessness problem, things that we have to address here. There's also mismanagement of funds. So that's driving people out, which is not going to help the city to build or, help with the taxes or the budget at all.
Okay,
I'm
well,
gonna disconnect you and let the mayor respond.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
I appreciate the call. I think I disagree with a number of the assertions that the caller made, because I just, quite frankly, don't think it's true. New Haven has a higher mill rate than New London, but the essence of her question or her statement is correct. That section of the Connecticut statutes, 12-81, which exempts, I think, over 100 categories of organizations and tax-exempt, entities from paying property taxes in their host cities, is what's killing the cities in this state. I mean, if I had my wish tomorrow, I would just